Hello folks, welcome back aboard Charis this week. My last video, I spent a little time talking about the great schlep, the carry in, carry out, lugging of stuff back and forth to the boat, which is a big part of this lifestyle. And one of the things that is a big part of that at 8.4 pounds per gallon is fresh water. Now, I am a product of the Larry and Lynn Pardee old school philosophy of go small, go simple, go now. That was some of my guiding influence as I got into this lifestyle. Um, Combine that with the fact that I have had the displeasure of maintaining reverse osmosis water makers on commercial boats. And suffice it to say that this is one of those areas where I'm a great fan of simplicity. So the only reverse osmosis water makers I carry on Charis when I go offshore are a small emergency one for the life raft and a hand pumped one for moderate emergency but non-life raft use. Anyway, those are survival tools. Those are not means of getting water to the vessel on a normal basis. So there are really, this can be broken down into two parts, which I'll show today. The first way of getting water to Charis is to bring the boat to the water. So for about 8 months out of the year, I will, about every 2 weeks, which is somewhere less than half of my actual capacity range, I will actually wait for a nice calm morning and take the boat into the yacht club that I pay a membership fee to use the docks of, um, and drag out a hose and refill my water tanks, usually at the same time give the boat a rinse off. That's, as I say, about 8 months out of the year. The other 4 months, when it's too cold in New England to leave water turned on the docks, I bring water to the boat and go back to the schlepping video. Now, over the years, that's been handled a number of different ways. Early on, when I lived in more populated marinas where there were lots of people living aboard, it would be typical for us to sort of pool our resources and have one very long hose that could run from typically the main building at the end of the dock where the showers are, and could be connected inside in a heated bathroom, and then run out to fill the boats. And the normal procedure was that you would sort of all get together and do that on the same day and help each other out. Um, Still quite a chore if you're talking about several hundred feet of garden hose in the middle of winter. Another marina I lived at, the folks that lived there had sort of gotten together and figured out that if they ran a long garden hose, capped the ends, and let it sink to the bottom, most of the time you could pull the ends up above the surface of the water, even if there was some thin ice, um, stretch those ends out to a hose connected to a non-frozen tap. And again, just sort of everybody get together the same day, fill your tanks. Uh, that all worked fairly well, and it was a way to do it, but there was always a little bit of anxiety about whether you're going to get the day to fill your tanks when you needed it. Um, of more recent years, I have just found it more convenient to carry a smaller amount of water during those 4 months when the dock water's turned off. Smaller amount of water more frequently, and I've really come to like my little 2.5 gallon water carrier that I can fill and very conveniently manage on and off the boat. So that'll be the second part of this video. I realize that this puts me pretty severely out of step with the current ways of thinking. I guess everybody has the prosperity these days to invest several $1,000s in a reverse osmosis water maker, and certainly if you're going off to places where fresh water is difficult of access, the long ocean voyages, the small islands that have no running freshwater source, and there are a lot of reasons why a reverse osmosis water maker is a wonderful thing. Um, so this is another we each sail our own ship moment. Uh, my particular cruising at this time in my cruising life is to places where fresh water is generally readily accessible, and most often so accessible that there's no charge or cost for it. Now, I will accept the cost of being in New England and belonging to some marina or club that allows you to come alongside and fill your water tanks. I know there are ways around that. I know that there are the old sort of urban legend about people going up the intercoastal waterway and pulling into the fuel dock for 2 gallons of fuel and 200 gallons of water. Uh, but that accepted, if water is fairly accessible where you are, having a reverse osmosis water maker on your boat is a pretty large maintenance and cost item that, in my opinion, at least in my case, I don't really need. So getting shore water is my way of doing it right now. So I think that reverse osmosis water makers in general are one of those things that anyone can understand the benefit of, but very few will take the time or effort to understand the cost of. And I don't mean cost in dollars. I mean understanding the process and understanding that water is a relatively incompressible fluid, but that in order to force it through a desalinator membrane, you've got to elevate the pressure of that water to somewhere around or above 800 pounds per square inch. Now, doing that to fresh water is challenging enough. Think of a pressure washer that you would use to wash the bottom of your boat. And those are generally wonderful items, but they are somewhat high maintenance. You've got to be pretty careful about how you treat them. Now run salt water through that same type of pump, and essentially what you've got is a very high pressure, semi-corrosive liquid that you are pushing through very often plastic components so that they deal well with the corrosive side. But anyway, you're talking about a lot of pressure and you're talking about a lot of energy. To get water from atmospheric pressure to 800 psi, you have got to have a fair amount of whatever source of energy, whether it's electric or, in the case of the Rain Man, little gas portable water makers, gasoline pump. Essentially, you've got to put a fair amount of energy into that pump in order to force water through that membrane. And then you've got to be pretty careful about how you treat the membrane after. So you don't want to use them in polluted water. You don't want to use them and then leave them sitting for a great length of time. There are all sorts of things that go into owning a water maker that I'm not sure that everyone who gets one considers before they get it. It's certainly a commitment, but not just a commitment in initial cost. I think I'd summarize my attitude of reverse osmosis water makers as that basically you're not buying a piece of equipment, you're adopting a very needy dog. This is a piece of equipment that if you have, you will absolutely love. If you neglect, well, it becomes a problem. And suffice to say that, like adopting a pet, the initial cost is nothing compared to the life cycle ownership cost. So that's kind of the way I see it. So for option one, which is, as I say, about 8 months out of the year, where I bring Charis to the water, it's really, there's no rocket science here. You pick a nice calm morning when the wash float is open and available. You bring the boat in, secure the wash float. My tendency is to give the boat a saltwater rinse off first. That tends to get any standing water that's been in the PVC pipes and hoses out of them so that you're putting a clean flow of water into your tanks. Give her a little rinse off, get the salt off, then basically come down below here and roll up the carpet, open up the water tanks. Now, during this 8 months of bringing the boat to water, my tendency is to use the original two Monell water tanks in Charis's keel. These tanks are original, as I've talked about in previous videos, being made out of Monell. There's really no better or healthier material to store drinking water in. And I do drink this water, though I run it through a filter. So what you'll see here is I get the rug out of the way, open up access to those two tanks, and I also use an inline hose filter here. Inside of this canister is a charcoal filter that tends to knock down some of the chlorine as well as filter out particulates. In this part of New England, there's a pretty high chlorine content, so that if you were drinking that water directly from the tap or the hose, as we did as kids with no ill effect, it's a little like pool water. So I'm filtering the water on the way into the tank here. And again, no great science here. You come into the dock every couple of weeks or every 3 weeks if weather delays you. Certainly could go longer if I had to. And you just fill all your tanks. The whole process taking a half hour or less. And you start the clock ticking again for your next fill up. So freshwater fill option 2, which around here equates to pretty much December, January, February, and March, when overnight temperatures below freezing force all of the marinas and yacht clubs to shut off their dock water at split pipes, is basically just to fill this 2.5 gallon Reliance water carrier and carry that home with me at the end of the day and dump it into the tanks. Here again, the theme is simplicity, and I've done this with 5 or 6 gallon water carriers, but right now at this point in life, the 2.5 gallon water carrier, well, I guess I'm more of a nibbler. I'd rather do my chores in small bites, and this one works out pretty well for me, so I'm pretty happy with this setup. So this is a super helpful little gadget. I think I found this on eBay. It's basically a clamp that's designed to go over any faucet and then tighten onto it so that it seals against the base here, and basically it converts the faucet to a hose attachment. So this fitting right here is a standard garden hose end. What I've done here is I've taken a short section of sort of nylon canvas hose that had failed at some place along the line, and I've cut it into small pieces to use for things like this. Super convenient for a compact hose assembly. The only thing I would say is that with either this fitting or this sort of old, potentially not very strong hose, I would not put an end shut off on it. This is a part of a sun shower fitting that I use just to sort of finish off the end of the hose. You want to operate this by turning on and off the faucet, not by leaving the faucet on and shutting off the end, leaving the hose pressurized. But anyway, this is a very convenient fitting for use here in the office bathroom, where I often will fill my 2.5 gallon. As you can see, with the fitting and the fabric hose, this becomes a pretty easy to carry pocket size gadget. So if you were carrying a small jerry jug and didn't want to carry a large hose assembly, this would be one way to do it. Well, folks, thanks for coming aboard this week. And regardless of whether you're of the $8,000 water maker or the $8 water taker persuasion. May your tanks never run dry, and we'll see you next week.